Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the MSNS podcast. I am your host, Ryan Lim, incoming junior one. And with me today is a very special guest. Her name is Tina Plank. She is a 2010 USF alumni.
I am, yep.
I think it was because the topic on hand is about travel nursing because you are a travel nurse. And I just found it very interesting because I think the first time I heard about you was in the beginning of the summer through Joy. Joy Pham was our previous career chair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was like emailing me about ideas and about resume workshops, and she mentioned your name and what you do as a travel nurse. And I thought it was really cool because I haven't had many experiences with travel nurse, and I felt like USF or just maybe nursing schools in general don't really talk about what it's like to be a travel nurse.
They don't. And when I was in the program as well, I didn't learn much about it. It was only until I was out working and got to meet other travel nurses on my unit that I started to learn about it. So,
Do you feel like, I don't know, because I was thinking more about it because I used to think that travel nursing itself was like its own specialty in nursing, like ER, ED, ICU. But I've kind of come to realize, is that really the case? Or is it more like you have to pick a specialty within travel nursing, like you are specifically with the OR, correct?
correct. That's a good question. I wouldn't consider travel nursing its own separate, aside from, med-surg, ICU, OR. Although, I guess to answer your question, you do, when you sign up for an assignment, you do have to say, these are the units that I'm interested in working in. So if you've had previous experience in other units or other types of nursing, then you can for sure, speak with your recruiter and see if there's any contracts that they have. So for example, for me, I work in the operating room primarily, but I've also worked in pre-op and phase 2 post-op. So those are kind of two separate-ish areas in terms of signing up for travel assignments. And so I could tell my recruiter, hey, are there any assignments in pre-op in San Francisco? Or are there any assignments in the operating room in San Diego or something like that? So you do have to somewhat elect
I see. Okay.
what you're interested in. Yeah.
Yeah. And before we talk about anything with travel nursing further, I want to talk to you about your experience in the OR because I'm going to be completely honest. When you told me that, I got very excited because honestly, my only thoughts or opinions about the OR have been through TV shows, and obviously those are not the most accurate things in the world. So can you talk to me a little bit about what it's like being an OR nurse?
Yeah, for sure. That's another thing that, I feel like in nursing school, I don't know if it's different these days, but I don't feel that we get much exposure to. If I remember correctly, when I was in nursing school, I got like one day and we kind of just stood in the corner and, just saw what the surgery was what surgery was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, for some reason, even in nursing school, I knew that it was something I wanted to get into. I think I just like being in the action and like seeing what is actually being done. And I love it. I feel like once you're an OR nurse, you're an OR nurse forever. I love it because it's completely different. Like I said, when I got brought on to work into the operating room my first time, the training is, like as if I'm back in school, learning something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And you work in a team, for example, and I think that's what I like about it. It's a really high functioning team. You're working very closely with the anesthesia provider, whether that's a CRNA or an anesthesiologist. You're working very closely with the surgeons, and whether or not they have a PA or any type of assistant, you're working closely with the scrub person in the room. And then primarily, I'm a circulator, although sometimes I will scrub in surgeries as well. And I like it because, again, like I said, it's just that team dynamic, and it's fast paced, and you get to see all the different types of surgeries that are done. I feel like I'm learning something new every day, and Yeah, I think those are like the main things that I love about OR nursing. And you still, a lot of the times you get a bad rep because they say maybe you lose out on your skills and such, but I haven't found that to be the case, in terms of nursing skills. In my case, I have experience in pre-op, for example, and so we have to put the IV in pre-op. We do Foley's in the operating room as well, wound dressing, surgical wound dressings, things like that. So that's what I love about operating room nursing.
And you said one of your one of your primary roles was a circulator. Can you talk more about that? I'm not really familiar
Yes,
with that.
yeah, that's a good question. So circulator, you're basically like more like a coordinator.
Okay.
For example, so if I'm scheduled in a case, then the first thing I'll do is, most cases they come with a preference list and pick ticket where it kind of tells you like what a surgeon's preferences are, what equipment he or she will need in the room, what instruments, what supplies. And so for one thing, you want to make sure that you have all of those things ready, because once it's showtime, you want to limit the amount that you're leaving the room and trying to find
Oh
stuff,
yeah.
because you just want to be ready and have
Mm-hmm.
everything for that patient, and that in turn is great for the patient because they're under anesthesia for a less amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're coordinating that with your scrub personnel, and the scrub personnel is the person that is at the sterile field handling the instruments, passing them to the surgeons, helping them retract and such. So they really play a vital role in surgery as well. So you're kind of juggling that, and then you're also getting the entire OR suite ready, making sure equipment and things are not only there, but positioned in the correct place. And then you're also thinking about the patient, like looking up the patient, looking up their history. Why are they having the surgery? What special accommodations do we have to make because of their, other diagnoses, and just, what adjustments you'll need to make. And so that's kind of like the beginning part. And then you go and interview the patient, make sure, we're all on the same page about what we're doing. And then of course you're also making sure, consent is there and all your safety checks are in place. For example, if we're working on the right arm, then we have to make sure that that site is marked, like visible. We are all on the same page that we're working on the correct side. And then once you bring the patient into the operating room, we get them onto the OR table, the OR bed, and then you're helping the anesthesiologist intubate, and, the anesthesiologist or the anesthesia provider will put the patient off to sleep, and you're assisting with that procedure. And then thereafter, we usually start positioning. Some patients need to go lateral, or some patients, will have to flip them and go prone, and making sure, at that point, the patient's asleep. So you have to make sure the patient is safe, and, that the patient is in an ergonomically, the best ergonomic positions, just to prevent
Oh
injury.
yeah, yeah.
And then after that, we usually prep the area, to prevent surgical site infections. And then the surgery will somewhat start, they'll start draping and everything like that. And then at that point, you're basically the hands and, support to the outside world, because the surgeon and the scrub tech are at the sterile field, they're sterile, they are working away. So anything that they might need support in, or if they need something extra, then that's my job. If the anesthesiologist or anesthesia provider needs help with something, you're helping with that as well. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of what your role is as a circulator.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of coordinating, you're kind of,
Mm-hmm.
support for all members of the team.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. But I think that's great though that you mentioned how maybe there is like some sort of, I don't know if it's a stigma or just some sort of rumor that OR nursing is completely different from other traditional bedside nursing. But when you were explaining your role to me, it sounds like you're doing a lot of the same things. Like you were mentioning, you still do sometimes a Foley cath. You're still doing your what's it called, positioning. you're doing your assessments, and
Yeah.
you're still like keeping in mind like pressure injuries and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's a stigma because if you're not in it, then you don't know what we do. So it's easier to, say,
Mhm.
they don't do this because we don't know that, it's just a kind of an unknown, it's like a mystery world if you're not in it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel like there are a lot of things that overlap and then some. So
Do you feel like a lot of people are not in it because either they don't know about OR nursing in general, or is it more like it's actually hard to get into? Because I imagine you can't, as like you said, when you were doing your intro into OR nursing, it felt like you were just going through nursing school all over again. Does that mean that you can't get into it right off the bat as a new grad, or you must have some experience before you can transition into that?
that's a good question. I think both. I don't know if times have changed, and I hope that they have changed, but I remember starting when I first graduated and starting out, I felt like it was near impossible to go straight into the operating room. And I don't know if it was just because I wasn't taking the correct avenues and such, but I felt like, it was just hard to get in. It wasn't until I moved to Oregon, Portland, Oregon, just by coincidence, that I found a hospital that was willing to take, they called us transition nurses, which means you're not a new grad, but you're a nurse with experience elsewhere, but will train you like starting with perioperative, like 101, like from the
Mhm.
beginning. It wasn't until I found that place that I was able to kind of get my foot into the door and start my career in the operating
Okay.
room.
Mhm.
But throughout my career now, in meeting other OR nurses, I have met some nurses that were taken straight from new grad or as a new grad.
Mhm.
So I think that maybe the opportunities are opening up. And I hope that's the case because
Mhm.
I would convince everyone, try and
No,
convince
yeah.
everyone to come on.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And also, I just wanted to provide some clarification just in case like anybody is confused. Because I know when you were explaining your duties, you were saying you were talking about certain things that you would do before the surgery starts, like with the patient in terms of like consent, prior assessments, or working with the anesthesiologist. Does that, is there some sort of division between you as an OR nurse and perioperative nurse? Like if you are on a contract as a travel nurse strictly for OR nursing, does that mean you don't do anything concerning perioperative care?
do you mean like things outside of the operating room?
Yeah.
As a travel nurse, as far as my travel nursing experiences go, correct. If I was assigned to work in the operating room, then I'm just working in the operating room.
Okay.
But I do believe that, especially now, for example, I think that the operating rooms shut down for a little bit when COVID hit
Hmm.
because they wanted to reserve the rooms and for COVID and just emergent cases and such. And so I don't know if they did this with travel nurses per se, but for like operating room nurses, for example, they kind of put them in other units if they needed
Okay.
so and
Hmm.
they may or may not have done that with other travel nurses, so but
Hmm.
that's few and far between. So
So does that mean like as a travel nurse, would like it would be more beneficial to keep your options open in terms of contracts, not just sticking strictly to one field like OR?
if you feel comfortable and if you have the experience in it, then
But generally, people stick with just one specialty.
I think so. Unless again, for example, I think I met a scrub technician who was a travel scrub technician, and they have worked in the operating room, but they've also had experience in labor and delivery in their like
Okay.
C-section rooms. And so, and kind of like myself, like I have experience in pre-op, and if you have experience elsewhere and are interested and comfortable still working in those other units,
Hmm.
I I think it opens up your opportunities more. So
Hmm. Okay. But
Mhm.
when you initially started, you said that OR nursing was kind of already your passion that you were trying to pursue right off the bat, correct?
I feel like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it wasn't something I was right off the bat chasing, but I kind of had a feeling that even though I only had one day in
Mm-hmm.
the
No, no, yeah.
operating room during our nursing program, I was kind of already, I remember that day and I was kind of thinking, okay, this is where I want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
then, my focus shift back to studying and all that stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah,
focused
no,
on
no,
studying,
yeah.
passing and getting a job. So
But okay, and then so OR nursing aside, how did you even get started with travel nursing? Because I feel like I know a couple of my friends who actually are considering travel nursing, or they've heard of it and they really want to do it because obviously what they want to travel. But I think a lot of them are scared about the logistics and how they really get started once they graduate. Can you like touch on that a little bit?
yeah, so once you graduate, I believe and it depends. So there are so many different agencies, travel nurse agencies. And I want to say that most, if not all, will require at least 1 year of experience in whatever your field of nursing is.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some might take 6 months of experience, some might take 2 years minimum of experience. So I'm not sure. So ballpark 1 year of experience under your belt, which you'll want anyways, because that will help you, develop your own personal standards of care and your foundation and such. And then you can take that foundation and then go travel and learn all the different ways to do the different things. But then you'll also have your own standard of care that you can
Mm-hmm.
bring to the table. um, and so at least a year, let's just say at least a year of experience in whatever field of nursing it is. And then from there you'll want to link up with a nurse recruiter, a travel nurse recruiter or agency. And that relationship to me is most important. If you have a really good relationship with your nurse recruiter who knows why you want to be traveling, knows what types of things you're looking for in an assignment, just kind of having that working relationship makes all the difference, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Because that recruiter will find assignments that will match what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll talk with that recruiter, and what normally happens at that phase is that they'll go over your resume and your skills. They usually have their own personal list of skills that they want you to state, whether or not you're comfortable with something. So it's like a skills checklist. And then they'll also do references as well, and just kind of get to know you as a nurse and what your level of skill and experience is. And then from there, then you tell your recruiter, I'll just speak from my very first experience. I told my recruiter, hey, I've always wanted to take an assignment in San Diego or live in San Diego. So maybe I'll take my first assignment in San Diego, in the operating room. And so my recruiter looked up contracts that their company had with hospitals down in San Diego, and if there was any openings. And then boom, she found a few that was open at the time, and she asked me if this was something I'd be interested in. And then she kind of plugged me in. She submitted me, is what they called it,
Mm-hmm.
um, to the hospital. And then the hospital reviewed my profile and gave me a call. We did a brief interview on the phone, and then I was lucky and fortunate enough to be brought on. And so that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of my first experience.
So it just, from what you said, it sounds like. Before I ask, say what I wanted to say, like I want a clarification. Does that mean, like in terms of the recruiter, is it something that any aspiring travel nurse can just sign up for a recruiter, or is there some sort of interview process even with the recruiter to even just get one, or like get into an agency, or is it just like
I
anybody wants
feel,
to?
yeah, I feel that's a good question. I feel like I didn't have any issues. It was kind of like, oh, you're a recruiter. And, I got the way that I found my recruiter was through a friend that told me about travel nursing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I got linked up with that recruiter, and we just so happened to be a good fit for each
Mm-hmm.
other. And so no, there wasn't an interview process with the recruiter. It was just kind of like, hey, I'm interested in travel nursing. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? And she walked me through it. I told her, this is my first time. So, it's very foreign the first time around, the logistics and such. So can you break it down for me? And usually they're very good at doing that. So if
Okay,
they know that you're interested in travel nursing, then that makes them excited, and they want you to, they want to help you as much as possible.
what's the, I know you touched on the relationship between you and your recruiter, but this is just me being curious, like what did they get in return? Because I like is there like a small fee, like percent? I don't know if you want to get into that too much, but I was just curious about how, like, do they take a percentage off of your paycheck, or do you pay them something for them to help you find jobs?
That's another great question. So I believe this is how it works in a nutshell. So the hospitals work with specific nursing recruiter agencies,
Mm-hmm.
companies. So the hospital and the agency have a working relationship, and the hospital says, hey, we have this much amount of money, for you to find us a travel nurse. So they have a contract together, and the hospital pays the agency that, whatever that agreed amount is. And then
Okay.
that agency then, does whatever they
Oh, I
do,
see. Okay.
budgets it out to
Uh-huh.
whatever, the different things that they have to budget out. And then they come to you as a travel nurse and say, okay, we found you, for example, a contract in San Diego. Here's what your pay package would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so usually the pay package, I wrote this down so that I could give you a little
Well,
bit.
thank you.
Hopefully it's helpful.
No, yes.
So the pay packages usually include, at least all of my pay packages. So you get an hourly pay, just like, you normally would at a regular job, a taxable hourly pay. And then you get a housing stipend. Those ones are non-tax, and those usually reflect the city or place wherever you're going, usually reflects the cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also will get non-tax per diems, which will include that, which usually covers or is intended to cover like your meals and incidentals.
Okay.
And so those are like the main three items that they, spread the money
Mm-hmm.
into the pay package. And then there's also a side budget, I guess you would call it, for reimbursements. For example, I've gotten reimbursed for travel costs, meaning
Okay.
I have to move some of my stuff from and drive from, wherever I am, from Portland to San Diego. So they reimburse me for that mileage and such. And I've also been reimbursed for licensing. If you go to a different state, then you have to get in licensure via endorsement. And so
Mm-hmm.
that has a cost. And so I've gotten reimbursed for that. And then what's really great too is the companies nowadays, I feel like, are really invested in your professional development. And so I have worked with an agency that has reimbursed me for, like ours is called a CNOR. It's like the certification for your specialties.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So those are other perks and benefits to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It seems like the recruiter or the agency is such a beneficial middleman, because I feel like like otherwise, if you had to like look out or like seek jobs on your own, it would just be you and your relationship with the hospital. But because you have this agency and recruiter as like essentially as a middleman,
Mm-hmm.
they already kind of vet you through the questions they ask you with a checklist of the skills and their own kind of questions they ask, and then they just send it right over to the hospitals who are already seeking out these nurses.
Right. It seems that way. It seems to me, as far as the few assignment or the assignments that I have done, is that the hospitals are so used to working with that specific agency, and the hospital will, is kind of like, okay, we've worked with this agency before and they have sent us good travelers before. We haven't had any issues with them, so we try, they kind of have like a trusting working relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it kind of does seem like the aid through that working relationship, they kind of do vet for you and
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Like there's
does.
already some credibility there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so that's one of the pros of travel nursing as well is, for example, say I always wanted to live in, you pick a place. Where would you, if you could move to a different city?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Honestly, I would agree with you. I would be curious about something in San Diego, actually.
San Diego was great. I love San Diego. So that was like my situation. Although I knew that I was just going to do travel nursing, I wasn't like going to move there. But say like you've always wanted to move there. Taking a travel assignment first is a great way to get to know the hospital systems out there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're moving to an unfamiliar place and you don't know which hospitals, that you want to work for, which ones are good, like taking a travel assignment is a great way to kind of shop around.
Mm-hmm.
You work there for, usually the contracts are minimum of 13 weeks. And so you get 13 weeks to kind of see if this is a good fit for you. And then the hospital's kind of doing the same. They're saying, like if you do a great job, then a lot of the times they will offer you full-time positions if you're interested. So
Mm-hmm. Does that mean that, let's say there is not necessarily a new grad, but just like someone who's already had a year of experience and now they want to, like you said, plan on trying to move somewhere else, or they're just struggling to find their next job,
mhm.
even though they're not planning on becoming a travel nurse, does that mean they can still technically use that travel agency to like land themselves a job in a way?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Again, it's kind of like, it's just a good way for you to one, try travel nursing, and then the travel agencies will cross their fingers and hope that you like it so much that you just continue traveling. Or two, I have met a lot of travel nurses that did a travel gig and ended up liking it, and so they ended up staying and living in that area,
Mm-hmm.
and they got brought on as full time. So you have your options.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on these, like for me, like I'm kind of thinking about the cons now of travel nursing, right? And one
Yes.
thing that I kind of thought about was when you're on these assignments and you're like, it's not like you're trying to do what I said before, where you're trying to just land in a specific place. It's like, oh, you're like definitely dedicated to travel nursing, going from place to place, and you're meeting a lot of new people. You're forming these very wonderful and meaningful connections with peers, coworkers, with your team. But
Mm-hmm.
then ultimately, in the end, you do have to leave because you want to go somewhere else. Does
Right.
that get difficult? Like, and does it ever get to, or have you ever gone to a point where you feel like there may not be a point at making these meaningful connections if I'm just going to leave them in a couple of weeks? I don't know if that's a little bit too dark, or because that was just
well,
something that ran through my head.
no, that's funny you say that. So to start, my previous assignment was a baby assignment, which is rare. It was a 7-week assignment. So
Mm-hmm.
the running joke was, I started in the operating rooms, and they're like, "What's your name? Where are you from? Oh, how long are you going to be here?" And I was like, "I'm only gonna be here for 7 weeks." And then the running joke was like, "Okay, we don't really have to get to know you. That's fine." And I'm like, "Yeah, don't remember me. It's fine. I'm gonna be gone by the time you even realize what my name is." But that was the running joke. But no, I have to say that I have met so many incredible people on my different travel assignments that I still remain friends with, both full-time people and other travel nurses. So to answer that second part of your question, no, you meet such cool people, and I really do feel that people are placed in your life for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do feel like I've experienced that firsthand in all of my travel assignments. But in talking with your cons, I wrote this down also. Um, I feel like the biggest con is that you, like you said, you kind of have to start over
Mm-hmm.
every time. And you kind of have to feel comfortable being the new person and being the person that doesn't know where things are, doesn't know how these processes work, you know. And so in the beginning, it was hard for me because I felt like when I was working full time, I was there for a few years. And so I really felt comfortable. I felt, you know, I was a preceptor, precepting new grads, you know, and just kind of not like the most senior expert person, but somebody that, you know, could function independently and just knew the process and such, and
Mm-hmm.
can answer the questions or figure out who to ask if I didn't know the questions. And then to go from feeling like super high functioning and then going to a new place and not knowing the system, not knowing XYZ, you know, and just feeling like the new person every time. That would be my one con. But at the same time, it really stretches you, you know, to be comfortable in the uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of these hospitals, and it's not like you're like sent off and you have to figure things out on your own, because a lot of the hospitals that have travel nurses are used to having travel nurses.
Mm-hmm.
So I have yet to go to a place where I didn't feel comfortable asking people for help, like asking a random person, like, hey, you know, I'm a travel nurse and I just started here. Do you know what the process is for XYZ and such? And so you just kind of have to be, again, comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it helps if you're a fast learner and if you like learning. And then that also ties back into why it is important to have that maybe one solid year of
Mm-hmm.
experience, because then you have at least your foundation, at least you know that, at least that is familiar to you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always good. And then to also turn that con into a pro is that you learn a lot. You learn a lot
I
with
can
travel.
imagine.
You go to different places and you see that how different things are done, you know, and then at the same time you bring a lot to the table because you've seen how it's done elsewhere and you can maybe potentially help improve other places. So that would be my one big, or I guess my biggest con. And then I guess the other con would be, it's just a new world. And like when I first started, I always considered it a little bit unconventional
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, I just felt like the conventional way was to, you know, graduate, get a full-time job and stay there forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that's not the case with travel nursing. You're jumping around. And so that's just a little bit different.
But because you're jumping around, I don't know if this would be technically like a pro, or like, because I feel like travel nursing, even though there are a lot of similarities with like travel nursing and just like regular traditional nursing,
Mhm.
I imagine you have your own set of struggles and difficulties. But
Mhm.
would one of them still be burnout? Because I know a burnout is a big thing in nursing, but do you feel like it would be hard? It's like easier for you to not experience burnout because you get to get that fresh start after every couple of months. Is it? Do you feel that or?
That's a very good question because I know burnout.
Yeah.
When I was,
Mhm.
yeah, no, when I was in Portland working in the operating room, you know, I got my bearings. I felt like I was working full time in the operating room at a level 1 trauma center. And the trauma center also did burns and was also a pediatric hospital as well. And so we saw a lot of stuff and I learned so much. And I was working 12s. And as a nurse, even if you're not in the operating room, it's so easy to pick up work. Yeah, like, everyone needs help, you know.
Oh yeah.
And so I worked per diem in pre-op and post-op at a different hospital. And so I worked per diem, I worked full-time, and then in addition to my full-time, I was taking call. And I was just taking calls because it was always available, and it's just really, like I said, it's really easy to pick up shifts. And so after a few years of doing that, I got burnt out. I got burnt out to a point where I did not love nursing anymore. I hated it, actually. And I was just angry all the time, short-tempered, and just kind of like, or just burnt out, all the symptoms of burning out, because I felt like, okay, I had time, so might as well fill it up with work. Bad idea. You need to do something for you, and I know a lot of people are saying that now, wellness and all that stuff, but it's so true. It's vital, not just in your nursing career, but just for everybody. You need to have something for you. But that's a different topic. I did feel like travel nursing was the complete opposite, because I felt like I felt like I reclaimed my own time. I felt like my time off and my schedule, I felt like there was way more flexibility. For a number of reasons. For one, you're taking a 13-week assignment, right? And before you sign on, they'll ask you, okay, within those 13 weeks, was there any dates that you needed time off in? So you tell them, like, well, yeah, by the way, that week of Christmas, I can't work. So things like that. I guess if you take an assignment during the holidays, I'm sure there are, you have to probably at least work one if your 13 weeks fall within the major holidays. But that's just an example, right? And so I got to tell them when I wanted time off. And then after the 13 weeks, typically if you had a good working relationship, good experience, they'll ask you to extend. And then you can extend right away, or you can give yourself a break. I have met several travel nurses or travel scrub techs that will do that. I've met some that will take a 13-week contract and then take 13 weeks off to live their life, and so I just feel like there's a lot more flexibility with your time and your schedule. So I feel like it's the opposite of contributing to burnout.
Interesting. Okay. But when like you said about your friends and your people that you've known that take the 13-week job and then have like that 13-week holiday, are they or are you ever worried that you're not going to find another contracting gig? Because I feel like sustainability is a main concern that a lot of aspiring or incoming travel nurses might have. Like, am I going to get another job after this?
Right. That's a good question. In the beginning, I did feel that way. And then once I jumped into it and saw that the hospitals still need help almost everywhere. And especially now with the pandemic, for example, hospitals need help. And so for my personal experience, I have not yet experienced not being able to find a contract. But what comes with that is also you have to kind of be flexible, in terms of the places you want to go. I'm not saying like, hey, I want to go to this city and there will always be a contract available. The major cities, yes. For example, like the major ones, Bay Area, California, probably Southern California, New York. I hear Texas is a big one as well. Those ones may always have travel nursing opportunities. Not always, forever. I don't know. I can't tell the future, but it seems that way. And so in terms of, you just kind of have to be flexible with like where you want to go. But I feel like there are, at least lately, have always been contracts.
Yeah. Why are there exactly contracts that like hospitals give out to these recruiters? Like, I imagine that, I feel like hospitals, maybe from just like my perspective, would want to just hire someone right off the bat for full time, invest themselves in someone they know that's going to stay for a very long time. Why do hospitals exactly have these contracts where they purely seek out travel nurses who are only going to stay for a couple of weeks and then go on to the next gig?
For my understanding is that for a number of reasons. So like for one, say a hospital has a lot of people out maybe they've got injured on the job, or
Okay.
are out on maternity leave or
Okay.
out on family leave, and so those are temporary things, but there are still needs,
Oh, I
and
see.
so
Okay.
travel assignments can fill those temporary gaps, but then also, um, there's still a shortage, and I guess some hospitals can't fill their full-time positions, so they'll if they can't fill their full-time positions and there's a travel nurse available,
Mm-hmm.
let's take the travel nurse and maybe we can turn that person into a full-time position.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I think that it's significantly cheaper to bring on a travel nurse, because I think, I'm not sure, because I never worked in that part of running a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think it takes a lot to invest in a full-time person, with considering like all the benefits that
Mm-hmm.
they offer you and such. So to
Does,
me, I feel like those are the top 3 reasons a hospital would
mhm.
bring on travel nurses.
And you say that there's always going to be some sort of shortage, and there's always going to be some sort of demand for travel nurses.
I hope it's so
Yeah.
far that's what it's been seeming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like I have talked to a seasoned travel nurse, maybe 1 or 2, that in their careers they have experienced a period of time where there wasn't as much contracts available.
Mm-hmm.
But as of so I started travel nursing 2014, 2000, either 2013 or 14. That might be a lie.
No, it's
Again, now I'm
okay.
getting all my dates mixed up.
No, it's okay.
No, I lied. 2017. Um, and since then, I have not had any issues.
Mm-hmm. How long do you see yourself doing this? Because all the travel nurses that I've met before you, they were all relatively young, and
Mm-hmm.
you're young yourself. But is there ever get to a point where you feel like you have to stop this and try to find something like a full-time job just somewhere and stick there? Because I know you said you had a husband, you already have a baby. So does that influence you in any way to feel like you need to settle down somewhere?
It does. That's a good question. I think that if you're asking generally, I think it's just going to depend on your work-life balance. And you know what, that applies to me too. I don't know. I don't know how long I'll do it, but for right now, it's been working for us. Have I ever thought about taking a full-time position, or, at a hospital? Yeah, from time to time I do. I will, though, admit that after doing travel nursing, I always joke around with like the managers that I've worked with before that I have commitment issues now after travel nursing, because
Uh-huh.
with travel nursing, again, like I said, I feel like I've reclaimed my time back. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so scared to take a full-time position and not have that, like
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a vacation. What? I have to request it and wait if somebody can fill my position? What?
Yeah.
Insane. And so in that aspect, that part makes me want to do travel nursing forever.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I do have a new baby girl, and I call her new. She's over 1 year old now, but I still feel new. And so, yeah, for her, I do feel like we're still in the middle of trying to figure out what's going to work best for us, because this last assignment, she was with me for the first part, and then the second part we were separated, and that was really hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have worked with other travel nurses and scrub techs that they do 13 weeks away from their family, and it just works for them. So
Mm-hmm.
it just depends on what is going to
Mm-hmm.
work best for you.
Okay, but I feel like regardless of what happens, I feel like because you're working there for a long amount of time, you're still setting yourself up well for if you wanted to go full time with this hospital, because you've already been there for a couple of weeks. They probably offered you a job offer, so it's like, wow, if I wanted to stay, I could stay.
I will be honest, I have felt that at every assignment that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's like it's kind of like a 13-week interview,
Yeah.
so, and you're trying them out and they're seeing if you're a good fit, and there's still that need that they're trying to fill. So why not have it be somebody that they are already familiar with, someone that is already pretty much trained, So
Yeah.
I have experienced that. I haven't bit yet.
Yeah. And yeah, like specifically for you, I know you touched on it a little bit, but why haven't you bit yet? I know like why
I
haven't you bit
haven't
yet?
bit yet because of my my work-life balance and my family situation. My
Mm-hmm.
husband travels a lot, and now we have our daughter. So I started travel nursing. We didn't have my daughter, and that was easier to do,
Mm-hmm.
because he would be traveling and then I would be traveling, and then we'd like meet up, during like long weekends or during like set aside vacation times and such. But now with my daughter, we're still trying to kind of figure that part out, because
Mm-hmm.
if he's traveling and I'm traveling, we're like, who's gonna watch
That's
although like
true. That's true.
although like I said, a lot of the companies offer a lot of benefits and such. So I have had a recruiter kind of tell me like, okay, like I could look up babysitting companies. I could see if our company has worked with any child care centers and such. So there are
Mm-hmm.
those resources. I'm just trying to still
Mm-hmm.
navigate and figure that out.
Okay, I think it's great though that they're willing to offer it, and there's also like so much flexibility within travel nursing, and because you have that flexibility, I know that you have kind of gone into this, I guess I call it a side business, right? That you've had where you've become interested in helping out, the future and following generations with resumes, cover letters, and like interviews. Since you had so much experience going from one hospital to another, you've just seen that process and been through that process so many times.
I have, and that's my other baby right now. I just in brief, like I've always been that point person for my family members or for like my coworkers and stuff, just randomly. I mean, you think it's randomly, but it's really like life and God kind of telling you like, hey, like this is something you're good at, so keep doing that. And so
Mhm.
I've always just been that point person helping people with their resumes, and I've just always loved it. And so what happened was COVID hit, and I was not on a travel assignment. I was still new mom trying to figure out, how would I go to work, if who's going to watch my daughter, etc. I'm at home. What can I do at home? And my friend reached out to me and asked me to help her with her, or actually I saw a posting, and I reached out to my friend and I said, this would be a really good position for you. You should do it. And she's like, okay, let me do it. And so she's like, okay, here's my resume. This is what I'm turning in. And so I ended up helping her. And then it just made me think, with the pandemic, people are maybe unfortunately losing their jobs, or maybe they're wanting to try something new, or maybe they just want to stay up to date with their resumes to be ready in case an opportunity comes. And so I just thought, oh my gosh, let me see if there's people that would like my help. So I posted it on my social media, just, generally speaking, hey, I love helping people with their resumes, cover letters, helping with interview questions, things like that. So if you or a friend need any help, reach out. And
Mhm.
then I would say within that like 2 weeks, I had 15 clients. And then from there, it just like kept growing. And
Yeah.
so then now, yes, it's my new thing. And I've worked. Have you had Cecilia Fong
Yes,
as
I
a
have.
instructor? So I graduated with her, really good friend, and so I've remained in contact with her throughout these years, here and there. And I forget how we even. Oh, she reached out to me and she asked me to speak to her class about wellness and
Mhm.
self-care during nursing school, and how to take care of yourself, even though you're in this really vigorous but really good program. And then we just were catching up, and I was telling her, oh, by the way, I would love to help if you have any nursing students that need help with their resumes, I would love to help them. And so she then brought me into some of the USF nursing students, and that's how Joy
Mhm. Yeah.
joy and such, because we did a panel interview with Cecilia and one of our other good friends, Jamie. And so that's kind of how I got brought on. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, to answer your question, I'm helping people with their resumes, no matter nursing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a social worker that was a new grad social worker, and she got a job. And it's just the greatest thing when I get the text and they're like, I got an interview or I got the job. Like, it's been, like I said, my baby.
One thing, like when we were talking before this podcast, that I really enjoyed that you said was how you have that feeling of excitement when these, I guess, clients come to you and they're so worried because they say like their experiences, they don't know if they're ready, they don't know if they have enough experience or if they're qualified, but then you have that excited feeling of like, you're actually qualified. You have done so much. And because I imagine that there's so many nursing students, myself included, that feel so underprepared, underqualified for everything. But it's nice to hear that you're giving that reassurance, that advice, saying, hey, you guys are qualified. You're doing so much already.
Yes, and you are. I remember that feeling. I remember that feeling. You just kind of think, okay, I'm graduating my nursing program, and obviously all the people that are applying to these new grad positions, everybody has had a PEDS rotation, everyone has had behavioral health, everyone has had L&D, everyone did their capstone, etc. But what's going to make me look different? What's going to make me stand out? And one of the tips I have is, within your rotations and such, go the extra mile. For example, if your unit is working on a QI project, a quality improvement project, jump in, do something a little bit extra. And, only if it speaks to you. Don't just be, I think we touched on this too, like, don't just be checking off boxes, doing more just to add more to your resume.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be something that speaks to you. Otherwise, it's not going to translate anyway. So why waste your time?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one advice I had. And don't put so much pressure on yourself. That's one of my favorite parts about helping people with their resumes, is that a lot of people will think that they're not qualified, or they have no experience, or they haven't done much. But I can see it. Like, I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
at it as an outside person who just met you, and I'm telling you, you have done a lot and you are more than qualified. And that's where I come in. I help show that, and I help bring that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third piece of advice would be the cover letter. The cover letter, some people apply to things without a cover letter, and I feel like the cover letter really brings that human touch kind of to who you are as an applicant. There's so many applicants. It's coming in, funneling in through, nowadays, to be honest, through artificial intelligence and AI,
Mm-hmm.
right? The computers are kind of like matching words, like,
Yeah.
how qualified is this patient or person? How qualified are they? And then after that, the top people get pushed to the hiring manager or the
Mm-hmm.
and so the cover letter just gives you another piece to share your experiences, share who you are, and kind of put that human touch to your
Mm-hmm.
many skills and
Mm-hmm.
experience.
So does that mean that the cover letter can be one of the most important parts? Because I imagine, like, I feel like nowadays everybody's going to have some sort of volunteering, everybody's going to have some sort of internship or CNA, EMT, whatever job, and they're all going to be applying to these same places. Do you feel like that cover letter is one, if not the most important thing, that's going to make you stand out amongst the rest?
I wouldn't say the most important thing, but it's a nice added touch. It's the
Mm-hmm.
whole package, right? It's the
Yeah.
whole package. And I wouldn't say, like, I don't know, I couldn't name like the most important thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I always advise cover letter, resume. They just go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And for new grad nurses, most new grad positions or openings, they require you probably like a personal statement or something too.
Okay.
So that can
Mm-hmm.
act as your cover letter. And again, that just gives you another chance to, express why you're interested in working for this specific hospital, because obviously they know that you're just applying everywhere. But the hospitals also, like I said, the hospitals are making an investment in you. They want to know that you're actually invested and actually interested in what that particular hospital is about. I would say that's another really important part too.
Yeah, and also I know we talked about this before about like a hypothetical situation where, let's say, you are a senior or you just recently graduated from your nursing school and you've had zero experience. Like, of course, you had your clinical experience, you focused on nursing school, you've done well in nursing school, but you
Right.
didn't really do anything outside of that, no extracurriculars. Like, what should they do then? How, like, should they continue or like try to rely or like perfect their cover letter more, or should they go out and try to seek a little bit of experience in something in the medical fields? What do you think?
I would say if you can find it in you, because I know how rigorous the program is, do at least one thing. Even if it's not in the hospital, even if it's not volunteering in the hospital, even if you're working at the grocery store or you're working at a coffee shop or anything like that, or working at a yoga studio, like speaking of things that speak to you, things that, will bring you self-care. If you could tie that in, even better. And the only reason why I say that is because if you have work experience, that there are a lot of things, there are a lot of skills and experience that will carry over to you being a nurse. For example, if you're working at a retail store, I have experience now working with people, like in a customer type of environment, and I have experience with, just that kind of etiquette. And that's going to be transferable when you're speaking with your patients, like you're going to need etiquette. You're going to need, to know how to speak professionally to them. You're going to need to know how, the whole idea of customer/patient satisfaction works, so there are a lot of things that are transferable. And I think that if you're able to do that, then it's valuable.
Okay. And I know we're running short on time, so I just want to, as like a closing thing, what is your kind of last advice that you can give to the aspiring nurses out there that are trying to do what you're doing right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think we touched on it a little bit. I know that nursing school is go, go, go. We talked about this. I remember, I don't know if it's the same or more. First day of class, you had to have read like the first 5 chapters already of the thick book. You know what I mean? So I know that you hit the ground running and you're like full force ahead, go, 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 studying all the time. This is a side advice, by the way. Use your resources at USF, by the way. Use your resources, like use your study groups. Go to your professors' open office hours, like talk with them, work with them. That's one thing that I did not do, which I wish I did. Those resources are there for a reason, and they work, they help you. You can't just, I thought I could just do it alone. And I did, but looking back, I was a commuter and I just kind of like went there, went to the class, went home, studied, and just did it all by myself. But if I could go back, I would actually utilize my resources and my, make my connections and stuff. So that's one side advice. But my main advice would be to find some time for you. Find something that brings your spirits up, lifts you up. It doesn't have to be a big thing every day, because I know that might feel like you're putting pressure on yourself to somehow find more time a day because you feel like you have to study every second of the day. You'll burn out. Like you won't have any fuel. And again, I was that person. I would study, I would drink the coffee, stay up, like try and study, but I would fall asleep like within 30 minutes anyways, So it's quality versus quantity. And so definitely find something just for you. And then find little things that you can do for yourself throughout the day, whether it's, and especially now, I'm not sure what school is going to look like for the incoming year. But if you're doing virtual things, like being in front of the computer and stuff, I feel like, and I would imagine that could be draining. So change your setting, go outside, light a candle, or, do some stretches in between, eat your favorite snack, or, just do a little million things just for
Mhm.
yourself. So
All right.
that would be my advice.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sheeta.
Yeah, thank
For all the
you.
people that are listening, I'm just going to leave her stuff down below. And if you want to check her out, you can check her out. Thank you
Thank
very
you. Good
much.
luck, everybody.